talking about? We're talking about spiders, and we're talking about pervitin, and we're talking about Bigfoot. I'm here to tell you where he's been. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. Here we go now. I'm talking about Mr. Gulley, and you don't know where he's been. Oh no, he's been right in your alley. Well, I'm Mr. Gulley, yes I am. So what we talking about? We're talking about spiders, and we're talking about pervitin, and we're talking about Bigfoot. I'm here to tell you where he's been. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. One, two, three, four. They call me Mr. Gulley. I've got something for your ear. Now it might sound kind of funny, but I'll make it very clear. So what we talking about? We're talking about spiders, and we're talking about pervitin, and we're talking about Bigfoot. I'm here to tell you where he's been. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. Here we go now. I'm talking about Mr. Gulley, and you don't know where he's been. Oh no, he's been right in your alley. Well, I'm Mr. Gulley, yes I am. So what we talking about? We're talking about spiders, and we're talking about pervitin, and we're talking about Bigfoot. I'm here to tell you where he's been. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way.
Hey everybody, what's going on? What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What is shaking on your Monday? Hope you had a good weekend and you got a good weekend coming up in front of you. Tonight, let me tell you about the South losing the Civil War. Recently on this program, you may have heard people insist that they did not lose the Civil War, claiming even that they won or it was a draw. Please. We're going to get into all that in just a little while. Please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell, all those free things that you can do to help us with the algorithm, the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing algorithm. Plus, we have super chats. We do have memberships, and we love it when you help us out with that because it helps pay the bills around here. And lastly, turn on those gifted memberships because people, very generous people, will just gift you a membership. Out of the goodness of their very own heart. It is the coolest way to contribute to the show because, well, it just makes you look, cooler. Now, let me tell you about the South losing the Civil War. This was traumatic for our country. It was brother against brother. It was devastating. Ken Burns was forced to do an entire documentary series on it. And I'll get to some of those tragic accounts here in just a moment. Tim Jenkinson is with us from across the pond. He says, happy Monday, Tom. Hope you had a good weekend. Same to you, Tim. He says his team, Everton, are climbing in the table above Man United and Spurs. I wouldn't have guessed that at the start of the season. I don't know. I would have hoped for it. Anything bad that can happen to Spurs, I'm not that crazy about Man United either, to be honest with you. Dupa Doo is here. I always love it when she shows up. She's got dancing girls and spiders. Spiders very popular here on this show for reasons I have no idea. And people saying hi. We do have the most cheerful chat room on the internet as verified by independent sources. Did you have a nice weekend? It's really hot here in England. It's going to be almost 100 here in Dallas, Texas tomorrow. So beat that. And so people talking about the weather. There you go. Tim says, America doesn't often win wars. We win them all the time. You're welcome, by the way. And what's with the spiders? I don't know. It just started happening. And I have done, and it's partially my fault, I have done some extended shows about spiders. So it's partially my fault. By the way, I should point out behind me is the parlor of the Appomattox, place where the surrender was signed. I'll get into more of that in just a second. But as I mentioned, Ken Burns was forced to do a very long, and I think it was the first big documentary series that he did, and it was on the Civil War. And so before we get into, because I'm going to tell you why they lost, and then I'm going to tell you all the deets of the surrender. Okay, not surprisingly, because it's the South, a dish towel was involved. So let me try to replicate a Ken Burns documentary, shall I? All right, because I went and I did my own research. And I got what I felt were two accounts, one from the South, one from the North, that kind of explains how the men that were fighting this war felt toward the end of the war. So I'm going to do this in Ken Burns style, sort of. This is Southern dirt farmer, but also member of the Confederate Army. By the way, that was his weapon during the Army, and that's how he was dressed for the war. They ran out of money and couldn't make uniforms. This is sharecropper and dirt farmer from the South, Jebediah P.S. from Virginia. And I'm reading his letter here. Got it right here in front of me, that he wrote home toward the end of the war. And it reads, Dear Lulabelle May Beulah Clara P.S. I am very tired. We have been fighting them bluebellies for what seems like 4 years now. We long ago run out of corn mush, and have been forced to forage for walnuts and various woodland grasses. Also, it is not fun to get blood out of my uniform every single day. It seems like if we had shoes, it would be easier to retreat, as the Union Army has cut off all our supplies of corn mash liquor and possum stew. Signed, your beloved Jebediah P.S. And P.S. Please convey my apologies to Cousin Clem and Cousin Maybelle for my not being able to attend their wedding. So heartbreaking. Actually heartbreaking. But don't worry about it. I do have an account from the Union Army. This is General Ezekiel Wilhelm Gulley of the 20th Indiana Volunteer Regiment, part of what they called the Iron Brigade. And his letter reads, Dear Mary, it is with a heavy heart that I write to you on the completion of the war. I trust that Mr. Jenkinson has attended to our affairs at the smelting plant in Ulitic. I will soon return home into your loving arms, and we will once again begin doing the things that we do here in the North, which includes not having 17 children, as I have seen during my travels in the South. I will return on a modern railroad car with a shiny pair of leather boots, which I understand would sell for quite a high price south of the Mason-Dixon line. By the way, you don't know how difficult it is to get southern blood stains off of them every evening during our march to Appomattox. All my best, Ezekiel. So there you are. Those are just two of the letters which I hope will encapsulate how difficult it was for the people fighting this war back at the time. Let me get it. There's a few more comments here. Let me see here. Gene1313 is here. Says, hello, my Gulley friends. And the great Mr. Gull, thank you so much. Wasn't it all thanks to the French that they won? No, Tim. No. I think that's more true of the war where we kicked you out of this country. I think that's people saying hi. Dupa is enjoying the photos, and the Hitman Blues Band says, that's your great grandfather. Oh, you guys remember Russell Alexander from the Hitman Blues Band. Incidentally, the blues were started in the South. That was because they lost the war. Yeah. Oh, I ain't got no more corn mush, and I'm going to marry my cousin. No, that's just a little good-natured ribbing for my southern friends. But always good to see the Hitman Blues Band. And if you get a chance, go to hitmanbluesband.com and check out everything they're doing. Russell is awesome. And go back and listen to the episode when he was on. He's a heck of a guy. I love that guy to death. Let's see here. Dupa says, I enjoyed when Jesse was on the show. You both really enjoy the sport of debate. Well, we're not having the sport of debate. No. We're having the sport of lampooning each other, I think. because in a debate, you're required to have facts and reality. And one of us, I'm not going to say who, is doing a lot of shtick. I mean, I do a little shtick, but I don't do it nearly. I mean, come on, the South won, please. That's some major shtick there is what that is. All right, let's see what we got here. Here are some of the reasons that the South lost. And they did lose. They were the losers. And they call it the War of Northern Aggression, but they're the ones that attack first. How can it be, yeah, I said it. You started it. Anyway, they were at severe industrial and economic disadvantages. The North had this huge advantage in industrial capacity and could produce way more weapons, ammunition, railroad equipment, supplies of all kinds, places to live. The Union also had way better transportation infrastructure, railroads basically, for moving troops and supplies. The South relied heavily on agriculture, especially, cotton, and they lacked the ability to sustain a prolonged war economically, especially after the North blockaded their ability to export cotton. And cotton, maybe not as good as bullets and gunpowder in a war. Just saying. I'm no military strategist. I'm no William Tecumseh Sherman. But I'm just thinking, maybe cotton, not the greatest thing in the world. Population disparity, the North had about 22 million people at the time, and the South only had 9 million people, and 4 million of those 9 million, let's just say, maybe weren't as motivated to fight for the South, given that they were owned by the other 5 million, the slavery issue. So this meant that the North had way more soldiers, way more manpower. And the South struggled, therefore, to replace battlefield losses, particularly late in the war. And that actually played into a strategy that's not that pleasant to think about, but I'll get to it in just a second, that the Union had put into play. The Union's naval blockade was also a big, big problem. Now, this sounds like a Bond villain's idea, but it really isn't. It was called the Anaconda Plan. The Anaconda Plan. And it was strangling the Southern economy by blockading ports and cutting off imports and exports, especially those critical war supplies of, hardtack, pewter, shoes. The blockade significantly reduced the South's ability to trade cotton for weapons and foreign support. Now, the fourth thing, and this is actually bigger than most people think, they think of the American Civil War and they think North against South. Well, the Confederacy was desperately hoping that the UK and France would intervene because they really depended on Southern cotton. But those two nations just went and found alternative sources, and those two nations were heavily opposed to slavery, and so they didn't get any support, for the Southern cause. Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 reframed the war. People are right when they say slavery was not illegal in the North at the start of the war. But in 1863, that proclamation reframed the war as a moral struggle against slavery, and that made foreign nations go, oh yeah, we don't like slavery, so we're not going to help them. So politically, they were kind of outcast there. Internal divisions also plagued the South. and the lack of a central authority. They had a central authority in Richmond, Virginia, but it wasn't that central to the whole South. It was way up and almost in the North, to be honest with you. They emphasized states' rights, which ironically worked against them because the states said, we have rights, and maybe we don't want to contribute troops. That's not good for our state. Or maybe we don't want to give you these resources because our state is more important than the Confederacy. So those states' rights, kind of a double-edged sword for them. The political unity for the war in the South was weaker than in the North. The North was like, hey, they attacked us. No way. We're not doing this. Everybody was in lockstep. But in the South, there were a lot of people going, is this really a good idea? Is this, Clark Gable, for crying out loud, and Gone with the Wind. I don't think this is a good idea, Scarlett. He didn't even start fighting until the very end of the war. Come on. Anyway, Lincoln's administration, not at first, but gradually centralized the management of the war. Now, here's another big problem for the South. Superior Union leadership. Not at first. At the first, the Union wasn't doing good in this war in the first quarter. All right? A lot of our subs were in. We had a few injured players. But over time, even though the South had excellent generals like Robert E. Lee or Stonewall Jackson, the North eventually got past all of the, old boys network and, this guy should be a general because his grandpappy was a general and his dad owns a farm that makes ball bearings or something. They got around all that and they turned it over to really actually very calculating and I don't want to say bloodthirsty, but just destructive. We are going to war. We will burn everything in our path. This is a military endeavor. This is not a gentlemanly pursuit. And that's when Ulysses S. Grant and especially William Tecumseh Sherman took over. Sherman just started for the coast and burned everything. The Union's ability to coordinate large campaigns and sustain pressure across multiple fronts at once proved decisive. Now, I told you about that not very pleasant thing to think about as it affects the Union's approach to the war, and that was attrition. It was a strategy called attrition. The Union's strategy of attrition, which basically means we have 22 million, you have 9 million. We can replace our guys. So we can do military things that will cost us a lot of soldiers, but we will make you lose a lot of yours because we can replace ours. You can't replace yours very easily. Attrition. We don't care how many losses we take. We are going to flood the zone, as it were. And that was a distinctive strategy. So when someone says, well, you had more casualties than, the Union had more casualties than the South. Well, yeah, they were willing to. You won't have any casualties if you just surrender every battle. You won't have any casualties if you just hide out. But if you go into a big battle and you say, look, there's 1,000 Confederate soldiers over there. They have a stronghold. We don't care if we lose 2,000 of our guys as long as we eventually take that position. That's what they did. Sherman's march to the sea devastated, and I mean this can't be stressed enough, devastated infrastructure and morale in the South, and it demonstrated the North's ability to wage what they called total war. Not just winning a battle, but we're going to destroy your rail yards, we're going to destroy your port, we're going to destroy your town, we will burn Atlanta to the ground. And that destroyed the South's will as well as their capacity to fight. So those were the reasons that they lost the war, okay? Those were the reasons they lost the war. But here's how the whole thing finally went down. Let's get to some of your comments first. People saying hello to the lovely and talented Russell Alexander, who's I think there's been Mother's Day photos and people's birthdays recently. They're a wonderful family, very photogenic, not like myself and my ancestry here that you can tell. I mean, look at that guy. He's got like a garbage can sized head on that frail body. Does my great grandpappy Ezekiel Wilhelm Gulley of the 20th Indiana Volunteer, the member of the Iron Brigade, by the way. Russell's saying hi back to people. He says, "Why, my stars, the war was about states' rights. Just forget about that cornerstone speech. It's alternative facts." Well, that's the other thing, is they want to say states' rights. And that might be a position that they would take to insist that one of their states' rights was slavery. If you read the secession speeches, the speeches in all of the state houses throughout the South, every one of them, and you can read them. You can read them. They're available online for free. They're not hiding it. It's slavery, 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 slavery. We need slavery. We need to get slavery. We can't make as much money without slavery. We got to have slavery. So, while both things might be true, they weren't saying, hey, these guys, they want to tax gingham dresses, and we don't want a tax on gingham dresses or therapeutic papers or the cotton gin or whatever it is back then. It was about slavery. Tim Jenkins says, did the natives fight in this war at all? Sporadically, kind of, but not really. There was some scouts on both sides, I believe, that were Native American. The Union were Russia and the South was Germany in that respect. The Union were Russia, and the South was, okay, attrition. Yes, I got you. Were the Chinese still in America at that point? There were Chinese in America, although I believe the largest, many more Chinese immigrants came to the United States after the Civil War. I think it was later in the 1800s that there was a large influx. But yes, there were people of Chinese heritage in the United States at that point. At any rate, Chinese very significant in the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, which I believe occurred after this by a fair piece. Let me find out. Transcontinental Railroad. Yeah, it was completed in 1869. So they were beginning to come here. It was actually started in 1863. I'm assuming that slowed down during the war, although the war wasn't necessarily fought quite as much out west. There was fighting, but we hadn't established statehood through most of even the Middle West at that point. So anyway, let's see. You should get them back so you can get some high-speed rail. Well, that would be, I think, Japanese as well. And we do need, I'd like to see the rail system back in the United States. Once we built the interstate highway system, the rail went kind of south. I'd like to see us redevelop that so people could travel a lot easier from place to place. And also the goods could be shipped to, rather than all these 18-wheelers out there, why don't we get the railroads back and just have big distribution hubs? That's just me. I live in a dream world. of lollipops and ice cream. Let's see. I was surprised that Morocco has high-speed rail. You'll find that some of the countries that you don't think have certain advancements do because they're late adopters. So, like, if you build the first thing ever, you don't get the benefit of the improvements. It's like television. We started with television. Great Britain started with television. If you go to Singapore, when over-the-air broadcast was, a big deal, their resolution was amazing because they adopted it after we did, and the technology was better. So, happens with a lot of stuff. Anyway, let's talk about the very end of the war, shall we? Let's just get to the end of the war. Let's get Grandpappy Ezekiel off the screen. Here you go. There's two guys that are getting along. Now, you don't have to be a military strategist. You don't have to be a famous military author like Stephen Ambrose or Patrick K. O'Donnell to look at this photo. And what is the most notable thing about this photo? And this is not a photo, a painting. This is not, rocket science. How can you tell this is a painting of the surrender? Well, I don't know about you. But one of the key tip-offs to a fellow like me is that the one side, wearing the gray uniforms, has a dude shaking hands and one other dude. And the other side has 27 guys in there. Now, that looks like kind of a, you know what I'm saying? It's a very surrendery thing. All right. So the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse was fought on the morning of April 9th, 1865, and it was one of the last consequential battles of the American Civil War. And, it was the final engagement of Robert E. Lee and his Army of Northern Virginia before they surrendered, as you see before you now, to the Union Army of the Potomac under the commanding general of the United States Army, Ulysses S. Grant. And this is actually a kind of an interesting story. So Lee left the capital of the Confederacy, the Richmond, Virginia, after a 9.5 month siege of Petersburg and Richmond, and he retreated to the west, hoping to join his army, his Confederate forces, with the Army of Tennessee, which was in North Carolina. He was desperately trying, because he knew he had to get a bigger collection of troops, a bigger army. So he wanted to merge those two armies to be able to fight these giant Union forces that were harassing him everywhere. So the Union had infantry and cavalry, under General Philip Sheridan, and they cut off the retreat in the little village of Appomattox, Virginia. Now, Lee launched a last-ditch effort to break through the Union forces, assuming that this Union force was just lightly armed cavalry, but when he realized that the cavalry was backed up by 2 corps of infantry, he had no choice but to surrender. His means of escape were completely cut off. And so the signing of these documents occurred in the parlor. Let me show you the parlor. Do I have a picture? Another picture of the parlor. Hold on. That's the parlor behind me there. That would be the parlor. I'll show you again I'll just go ahead and show you again right now. Here's the parlor. In this little parlor here. That's where the thing was signed. And I'll tell you what they had to do here in a second. So the military situation was, I could get into greater detail. I mean, Lee wanted to reassemble his army. He wanted to hook up with General Joseph E. Johnston's Army of Tennessee and North Carolina and go on the offensive and start to sort of break out and defend Virginia, where the capital of the South was, and then, sort of reset and see what they could do. But when they arrived at a little town called Amelia about 5 days before the surrender, they found no provisions whatsoever, which was a pretty common, occurrence for the South. And he sent out wagons to the countryside to forage, but that cost him a day's worth of marching time. And then they headed west to Appomattox, right, where another supply train awaited him. And now he had basically just cavalry and 2 small infantry corps. So en route to the station, about 1/4 of the retreating Confederate army was cut off by Sheridan's cavalry. And, Confederates attacked, but were driven back. And soon after, the Union cavalry cut through the right-hand flank of the Confederate lines. Most, at that point, of the 7,700 Confederates were captured or surrendered, including Lieutenant General Richard Ewell and 8 other general officers. Now, that delay prevented Lee from reaching the station until late afternoon on the 8th. This is the day before the surrender, allowing Sheridan to reach the station ahead of the Southerners that evening, where he captured all those supplies that Lee had been hoping on and obstructed his path. There were a few minor battles, right? And at this point, General Ulysses S. Grant sent Lee a note. And that's the way they did things back then. It's like, hey, you got to post it? Let me just send him. And he suggested to General Robert E. Lee that it was time to surrender the Army of Northern Virginia. And in a return note, Lee said, I'm not going to do that. But what did you have in mind? I'm not joking. His return note was like, I am not going to surrender this army. I'm not going to surrender the Army of Northern Virginia. But if I was going to, how would that go down? All right. On April the 8th, the day before the surrender, Union cavalry, under a guy by the name of Brigadier General and Brevet Major General George Armstrong Custer, captured and burned 3 supply trains waiting for Lee's army at the Appomattox station. So General Custer, who was destined in his life to have a rough go of it later on a particular day, he captured and burned all of those supply trains, 3 of them, that Lee was counting on. They desperately needed supplies. Now, both of the Union forces, the Army of the Potomac and the Army of the James, were converging on Appomattox. And this sort of ragtag, short 7,700 soldiers Confederate force remained. With all those supplies destroyed, Lee now looked west. There was a railway in Lynchburg, Virginia, and there was more supplies there. This is a really sort of bad game of, Stratego or something. On the morning of the 8th, the day before the surrender, the 15th Pennsylvania Cavalry was detached from Stoneman's raid, into North Carolina and Southwest Virginia, and made a bolt to about 3 miles west of Lynchburg, where Lee wanted to go, giving the appearance of being a much larger force. And Lee says, we're going to try for it anyway. So now the Union Army's really closing in on Lee. And all that was between Lee and Lynchburg, why can't I talk today? Well, I'm just so excited. He hoped to break through the cavalry before the infantry arrived. He sent a note to Grant saying, well, I don't wish to surrender my army just yet, but I would be willing to talk about how your terms of surrender would affect the Confederacy, sir. Grant, who was suffering from a throbbing headache, gee, I wonder why, stated that, quote, it looks like Lee still means to fight, unquote. The Union infantry was close, but only unit was a small corps of the Army of the James, and they traveled 30 miles in 21 hours to reach the cavalry. All right? Another corps of the Army of the James arrived about 4 in the morning, and Sheridan deployed 3 divisions of cavalry along a ridge near the courthouse, right? Now, there was a battle. It was not much of a battle. The Confederates kept trying to attack and getting force back. I could go into great detail, but they were just being overwhelmed, okay? Colonel Charles Venable of Lee's staff rode in to tell Lee an assessment, and he gave General Robert E. Lee an assessment he didn't want to hear, which was, tell General Lee I have fought my corps to a frazzle, and I fear I can do nothing unless I am heavily supported. Upon hearing it, Lee finally stated the inevitable. He said, there's nothing left for me to do but go and see General Grant, and I would rather die 1,000 deaths. Many of Lee's officers agreed that surrendering the army was the only real option left, and the only notable officer opposed to surrender was Longstreet's chief of artillery, Brigadier General Edward Porter Alexander, and he predicted that if Lee surrendered, every other Confederate army will follow suit, which ended up happening. He was right, but he was also really stupid. There was nothing you could do but surrender. So Lee requests a suspension of fighting while he's trying to get these terms of surrender from Grant. And in true Southern fashion, you guys know what this is? Let me just, you know what this thing is here? Does it look like a dish towel? Well, that's because it is a dish towel. Yes. Oh, yes. This is what the South used as a flag of surrender. A dish towel. Now, to those people who say that the South won or it was a draw, when you're using a dish towel as your flag of surrender, I'm going to say you lost. That's just me, right? So after they arranged a truce, Custer, here we go, I'll put that up there, was escorted through the lines, this is a sketch, to meet General Longstreet, one of the Confederate generals. And according to Longstreet, Custer said, in the name of General Sheridan, I demand the unconditional surrender of this army. Longstreet replied that he was not in command of the army, but if he were, he would not deal with messages from Sheridan. Custer responded that it would be a pity to have more blood upon the field, to which Longstreet suggested that the truce be respected, and then added, General Lee is going to meet General Grant, and it is for them to determine the future of the armies. So at about 8 o'clock that morning, Lee rides out to meet Grant, and he's got 3 aides with him. And Grant received Lee's first letter on the morning of April 9th as he was traveling to meet Sheridan, and he recalled his migraine went away when he read Lee's letter. And he handed the letter to his assistant to read aloud before composing his reply. He said, General, your note of this date is but this moment 11:50 a.m. received in consequence of my having passed from the Richmond and Lynchburg road. I am at this writing about 4 miles west of Walker's Church and will push forward to the front for the purpose of meeting you. Notice sent to me on this road where you wish the interview to take place. And Grant's response was really kind of amazing in that way, because it let the defeated general choose the place of his surrender, which normally didn't happen back then. Lee got the reply within a half an hour and sent one of his aides to find a suitable location, and they chose the Appomattox courthouse. It's a little village, 20 buildings or so, that was a way station, pretty much, for people on the stage road from Richmond to Lynchburg. And so he rejected this old dilapidated house and then went to the home of Wilmer McLean. So there you go. By the way, the guy Wilmer McLean, he relocated to avoid the war after one of the first big battles of the Civil War happened on his land. So he has this big battle happen on his land, and he's like, I'm getting out of here. I'm relocating, and then ends up that the end of the war is negotiated in his sitting room. Anyway, with gunshots still being heard from the front and Union skirmishers still advancing on the southern front, Lee received a message from Grant. After several hours of correspondence between Grant and Lee, a ceasefire was enacted, and Grant received Lee's request to discuss the surrender terms. So Lee waited for Grant to arrive. He was dressed in his ceremonial uniform. He said, I may be taken prisoner today. I must look my best. And by the way, let's just show you what the courthouse looked like. This is the surrender dish towel sketch. This is the Appomattox courthouse. Now, do you see a lot of Confederate soldiers around? This is an actual photograph. Do you see a lot of Confederate soldiers around there? No, I don't either. So Lee's waiting on Grant to arrive, and his uniform was mud splattered. It was a government issue sack coat with trousers tucked into muddy boots, no sidearms. He's got these tarnished shoulder straps showing his rank. Over one shoulder, he was carrying a case for his binoculars. And these guys knew each other about 20 years earlier, but this is the first time they'd seen each other in about 2 decades. And Grant was suddenly overcome with sadness, and he found it hard to get to the point of the meeting, and they previously had encountered each other during the Mexican-American War, and Lee kind of had to bring Grant back to the point at hand because Grant was getting so sad and nostalgic. And so Lee brought him back to the matter at hand, and Grant offered the same terms as he had before. He said, in accordance with the substance of my letter to you of the 8th, I propose to receive the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia on the following terms, to wit: rolls of all the officers and men to be made in duplicates. Like, I want the names of everybody in your army. I want 2 copies of it. 1 copy to be given to an officer designated by me, and the other to be retained by such officer or officers as you may designate. So in other words, 1 copy for me, 1 copy for you. The officers to give their individual paroles not to take up arms against the government of the United States until properly exchanged. And each company or regimental commander sign a like parole for the men of their commands, basically saying all these dudes are surrendering. The arms, artillery, and public property to be parked and stacked and turned over to the officer appointed by me to receive them. So they're basically saying, we want all your weapons, we want all your horses, we want all your cannons and everything else. We want it all. It did not include the sidearms of officers or their swords or their private horses or baggage of officers, And if that was done, each officer and man will be allowed to return to their homes, not to be disturbed by the United States authorities, so long as they observe their paroles, in other words, don't raise arm against the United States, and the laws in force where they may reside. And those terms were the best Lee could hope for. That meant that his men wouldn't be imprisoned in a war camp, or they wouldn't be prosecuted for treason or shot to death. Grant also allowed the defeated men to take home, if they had personal horses or mules that they had brought with them to the war, that they could take those with them for the spring planting, because it was April. Provided Lee with a supply of food rations for his army, which was starving. And Lee said it would take a very happy effect among the men and do much toward reconciling the country. They recorded all of these terms, and, so Lee left the house and rode away. Grant's men began cheering in celebration, but Grant immediately ordered them to stop. I at once sent word to have it stop. The Confederates were now our countrymen, and we did not want to exult in their downfall. Custer and other Union officers purchased the furnishings of the room, and Grant met in as they purchased everything in the room Lee and Grant met in as souvenirs and emptied it as furniture. So they paid the farmer for all this stuff, but they wanted it as keepsakes. And Grant visited with the Confederate Army, and then he and Lee sat on the porch at the McLean home and met with visitors before the two men left for their capitals. And Lee gave a farewell address to his army, and they went about dismantling the whole Confederate army. About 28,000 Confederate soldiers passed by and stacked their arms. Official count was 28,356, and they surrendered and were paroled. That does not include the 7,700 that were taken in, before that. So several other Confederate armies were still messing about, and they all, it took them time to get the word that the surrender had occurred. So basically, like General Joseph E. Johnston's army in North Carolina surrendered on the 26th, and 89,270 Confederate troops laid down their weapons at the end of the conflict. Richard Taylor surrendered his army on May 4th. President Jefferson Davis met with the Confederate cabinet for the last time on May 5th. In Washington, Georgia, by the way, and dissolved the Confederate government. They didn't do that in the capital of Richmond. Davis and his wife, Varnia, along with their escort, were captured by Union forces on May the 10th. Upon hearing about Lee's surrender, General Nathan Bedford Forrest, future leader of the KKK, also surrendered on May the 9th. General Edmund Kirby surrendered the Confederate Trans-Mississippi Department in Galveston, Texas on June the 2nd. So slowly they all surrendered. And that means, and I can't state this enough, they lost. L-O-S-T, lost. You do not surrender when you win or tie a war. And there you go. There's a fine newspaper front page of the time. Slavery and treason buried in the same grave. Dawning of the day of peace. All honor to the gallant brave. Liberty and union forever. America by the grace of God, free and independent. So there you are. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of the South losing the war. Please like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. And by the way, we do have those memberships and those super chats. We would love it if you would, take it. Oh, SG Fanboy is here. Hey, SG, looky what I did. There's Confederate dirt farmer Jebediah P.S., and here is Union General from the 20th Indiana Volunteers, General Ezekiel Wilhelm Gulley. Anyway, I thought you might appreciate that, SG. Let's see here. We got a bunch of your chats to read, and then I will post the link. Let's see. The wolf has arrived. Facial hair, very popular in those times. Oh, yeah, it was. Everybody had to have some facial hair. Even General Ezekiel Wilhelm Gulley had facial hair. The South should have given Mexico land in exchange for help. Should we now? After the Alamo and all that stuff in the 1840s, are you insane? You guys should have given the Irish their freedom after. Please. General Lee sent a text. Yeah, General Lee slid in to General Grant's DMs. Victor says, I love the study of South versus North. I love the miniseries North and South. I'd like to watch that again. I'm going to see if I can find it online. The Wolf says, those no good blue boys, those sneaky underhanded bluebellas never fight like gentlemen, no good sons of guns. No, they really didn't. Tim Jenkins says maybe he's an ancestor of Ruta Lee. I don't think so. Ruta Lee's real last name is not Lee. It's what was she? Lithuanian last name. It's her real last name is, hold on, I'll give it to you here. Don't you worry. Ruta Mary Kilmonas. So it was not that. SG fanboy, always good to see you, brother. Victor says, where I live, Pacific Northwest. Yeah, okay. The Wolf says, that dish towel, well, that just shows we use everything but the kitchen sink. Well, that towel just shows a courtesy to a guest, almost like offering a guest a massage. People saying hi, people saying hi, people saying hi, people saying hi. Clint Eastwood movies. Yes, The Outlaw Josie Wales, an account of the post-war surrender period. I don't know what that means. Tim, I think your view of the American history is a little skewed. South will rise again. Mullen, that means that it had ever risen. Did it? Did it? Pale Rider was pretty good. Tim Jenkins says, I'm part Irish, so I agree with that. Yes, the Troubles. SG Fanboy says, those are great, Tom. Yes, I was very pleased with myself. Hey, Wolf, the Missouri, Missouri, I don't know what that is. Guinness 1987 says hi. Hello, Guinness 1987. So good to see you. Do I got any pictures I haven't shown here yet? No, I don't. But I do enjoy General Ezekiel, and I do enjoy Jebediah P.S. Now brothers again, due to the waving of the dish towel, the surrendered dish towel of the South. I'm so sorry. Oh, I don't have to do that. I have to do something else. Hold on, bluebellies. Hold on. Just a second here. I'm going to go ahead at boom, shaka-laka-laka. I'm going to pin the link to the chat, and then you can chat about the South losing the war. I don't, by the way, have any clue whatsoever what tomorrow's show will be about. None. I have not one idea. So I'm sure I'll figure it out at some point. But it'll be figured out. Trust me. Trust me. Maybe I should do it on dish towels. I don't know. It seems to be there. Let me see here. Pin the message. The message has been pinned, ladies and gentlemen. It has been pinned. What do you think about that? The Missouri River scene. Man Encountering Josie, very good. I think that big talk's nothing but a lot of doodly squat. Tim Jenkinson says General Gulley looks like a mix of Christoph Waltz and Steve Carroll. It's me, thank you. You might want to include me in there. my show and everything. Guinness would like the SS Liberty to be the subject of tomorrow's program. I'll look into it. But you guys with all of your crazy, not real conspiracy stuff. I could do the Gulf of Tonkin. Now, that's a real thing. How about how the Chinese built America? They didn't build America. It's me saying the Pakistanis built Leeds, please. Haven't you seen the TV show Kung Fu with David Carradine? Please. It's a very historical. Israel, Tom, it's real. I know Israel's real. What else do I have on here? I was going to do one on Alan Turing, but I looked into his background a little bit and went, yeah, maybe I don't want to talk about that. Oh, by the way, we're not showing my feet on Wednesday. We're not doing that. Some people were, well, let's just say we're not doing that. The railroad made America what it is. Did it? I think Americans made America what it is. The industriousness of the people of our nation made it what it is. You could say the Conestoga wagon made it what it is. For the love of Pete. You know? There's a lot of things. Victor says hailing again. Oh, hailing frequencies are not open. That's funny. That's funny. That's pretty good. That's funny. I think kicking England out in the 1700s is what made us what we were. And then kicking them out again in 1812. Boom, shakalaka. And then having to save their bacon in World War I and World War II. You're welcome. And then beating them in the World Cup in 1950. Boom, shakalaka. England still looking for that first World Cup victory over the United States. We're undefeated. Strangely, though, so many American places have English names. That's not strange at all. We were an English colony till we finally said, hey, look, you might like tea, but we're sick of paying taxes on everything, okay? We've had it. Taxation without representation, not anymore. Sorry. By the way, America, because we are truly multicultural, has places with Dutch names, with Native American names, with German names, with Spanish names. Please. Victor says, I better hit the hay. Well, you, sweet dreams, gentle warrior. Tim says, you prefer crud, overly priced coffee. I think we prefer coffee of all prices. Doesn't have to do with the price. You guys like brown water. I like in Ted Lasso when he drinks it, he goes, this is just a joke, right? Seriously. I think we have more in common than we have not in common with our friends from overseas. Once you learned who was boss, after you were, well, incapable of continuing your worldwide colonialism, let's see here. That was a good show. Oh, Ted Lasso was amazing. Guinness says you should drink some gamer sups to go with your chair. I got this chair because a lady that I would say friendly with, we're not friends or anything, sort of like you guys in the chat room. We're friendly. We're, she had one, and this is not a comfortable. I thought this would be the most comfortable thing on earth. It really isn't. I live out west, just tired. Well, it's earlier there, too. The Wolf says, strangely, we still pay reparation to those English scoundrels. Well, you know, they need the help, Wolf. Come on, man. Don't shame them like that. They need the help, you know. Look, they gave us the Beatles. You know, you know what I mean? Should have gone for a massage chair. I should have brought my chair from Utah. It was the judge's chair but it was so giant. It would have cost a fortune to move it. But that was a darn good chair. But it had previously been the Wayne County, Utah judge's chair. Oh, that was a good chair. It will be nice if American companies paid some taxes here. I don't control that. Believe me, it would be nice if they paid taxes anywhere. I know that General Ezekiel Wilhelm Gulley is very in favor of them paying their fair share of taxes. I haven't spoken to the ancestors of Jebediah P.S., so I don't know about that. Any old way. Okay, there's the surrender dish towel again. If you really want to see who surrenders with a dish towel? Anyway, Strawberry Fields Forever, yeah. Wolf says, you know, in the days a fella didn't need a massage chair. Well, I've never used one. Dory, yeah, but they like Vindaloo a lot over there in England now. Your background is giving me vertigo. Why would it give you vertigo? Hold on here. I got to see how on earth would my background give you vertigo? Vertigo is the high up thing, isn't it? Let's see. Oh, yeah, they're all registered in Delaware to avoid the taxes. A lot of them are in Zug, Switzerland, to avoid the taxes. Michael Gardner says, back in the day, we used to always be shaking because of rickets. No need for a massage chair. The angle is bizarre. Well, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You want me to... is anybody else having a problem? Oh, I'm frozen. You better unfreeze me. I'm telling you right now. What are you doing? Unfreeze me. Be a guy and unfreeze me, would you? Oh, it's... by the way, I've been watching some other shows, like on... on the web here, and they are having this same problem with StreamYard. Tim Jenkinson says, I guess you have Mexican food instead of curry. We have all the foods. We have Italian, we have Mexican, we have Tex-Mex, we have Chinese. We have good old-fashioned American home-style, homespun cuisine. We got it all, baby. We got it all. Yeah, I'm aware of what that is, Victor. Victor, did you not see the show I did on the Paul is dead conspiracy? Didn't you see that? I did a whole show on it, Victor. Come on, fellas, you're losing your heads. But I guess the big point is the South did not win. They lost. They lost. These guys know it right here. Whoops. These guys know it right here. They know it. Well, I'll go ahead and make them whatever size. Hold on. Where was I on that thing? Well, hell, I'll do this. These guys know it. These guys knew it. These guys knew it. This guy here found out about it. This guy he was real happy about it. These newspaper people knew it. You know, everybody knew, right? I mean, everybody knew. So, let's see here. Oh, let's not mention Alex Jones. Freudian slip. Tim, every kind of food is represented here. Listen to it in the 70s. Same here. But yeah, I did a show on the Paul's Dead conspiracy. So, yeah, I don't know what tomorrow's show is about. Maybe I'll tonight just sit here while I'm making dinner and I'll just book the whole rest of the week. I don't know. It's hard to say. Really hard to say. But, okay, well, I guess that's going to have to, be the end of the thing. But the South lost is the main point. Pickleball. You want me to do a show on pickleball back on? I'll do a show on pickleball. All right. Pickleball, Bill Hicks. I'm doing a show on Bill Hicks. How about that? What's that do for you? All right, I'll do a show on Gulf of Tonkin for you conspiracy people. That would be entertaining. Crochet, too. Seems weird. Crochet might not be too bad. Tim, do you have Native American cuisine there? Weird. Bill Hicks playing pickleball. Oh, Bill Hicks was long gone before pickleball came around, I'm pretty sure. So tomorrow night, I will do a show on Bill Hicks. Wednesday night, I will do pickleball. Thursday night, the Gulf of Tonkin. Incident. I expect we do somewhere in London. Yeah, you have authentic Gordon Ramsay on the UK version of Kitchen Nightmares had a lady from the US who had an authentic barbecue place, ribs and that from the US. So you do have it there. Native Americans played pickleball with buffalo skulls. And that's the reason you can't find buffalo. They had herds that covered entire counties, and now well, okay. I guess we'll just close it out here with where did I? Oh, here it is. So tomorrow night, Bill Hicks. Then pickleball on Wednesday. I feel like Thursday I should do another TV show. I haven't done a TV show in a while. The Due South thing, it locked up my. I could do the Andy Griffith show. I was thinking about that the other day. Or I could do Bonanza. I don't really want to do Gunsmoke. I'd rather do it as a radio show. I think more people need to know about Gunsmoke, the radio show. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying? But I could do the Andy Griffith show on let's see, Bill Hicks, pickleball, then Andy Griffith's show on Thursday, and then Gulf of Tonkin on Friday. That would make me a week. Let's see here, pickleball. Quantum Leap would be really good if he hasn't covered. I have not covered Quantum Leap. I wish there was a Song of the South show. Are you okay, Victor? Yeah, Victor, you'd be okay, man. Jeez. You're hearing voices or something. Well, Victor's kind of on his own thing. I need some ratings. I need to grow this audience, and I have more than that, need to get some donations in here. So whereas I think Quantum Leap would be great for next week, I think I want to do the Andy Griffith show. Yeah. And I'll do Quantum Leap next week for you, Tim. How about that? Quantum Leap with Captain Miles Archer. So let me see here. How would this work? This will go tomorrow night, pickleball. Wednesday night will be Andy Griffith. Thursday night will be Bill Hicks. And Friday night will be the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Bam, there, it's settled. Settled now. Getting over it. Yeah, see, cornrow in hair conspiracy. Victor says, I don't like people threatening me. I don't think he threatened you. Fishman says the South won. Oh, Fishman, yeah, explain this. Explain this dish towel. And I'm not like making fun of this. I'm not saying, look at it. It looks like a dish towel. No. It is a dish towel. And that's the actual dish towel that the South used to surrender. Now, I don't know about you, but when you win, you don't surrender. And Fishman, you're late to the party. We just went through the whole thing. We went through the lamentations of Jebediah P.S. as the South lost. We went through the confidence and happiness of General Ezekiel Wilhelm Gulley of the 20th Indiana Volunteer Regiment of the Iron Brigade. We look, there you go. That's a painting. That Fishman is just a painting of two Confederate guys surrendering to 27,000 Union guys. By the way, here's a picture of the courthouse when it happened. You see any Confederates around there? No, I didn't think so. Nobody did. Here is the Southern forces waving the dish towel in surrender. And here is a newspaper headline. So, Fishman, you're going to have to make up a new... I'm sorry that you lost. I really am. But you lost. Or they lost, if it's not you. Guinness says, why can Tom see Fishman's message, but I can't? Seems fishy, ironically. Right there. Right there. Right there. YouTube does not hate you. Maybe I misunderstood. I was just asking because you seem in conspiracy. So, I think that's going to do it. The South lost. And I just keep coming back to it. Why would you surrender if you won? Or even if it was a draw, which it so wasn't. So wasn't. Oh, by the way, and why would we have to feed your starving army after we took all your guns and... Come on. Did they clean the dishes before the surrender? Well, in fairness to the South, that looks like a pretty darn clean dish towel to me. So they were gentlemen about it. That or they just always clean their plate. That's probably a Southern thing. They lick their plate clean. I am the South and the South is within me. So you're saying you fell for the dish towel trick. So you're saying you fell for the go ahead and surrender, we'll take all your guns trick. I guess they didn't have any food, so no need for dish. Exactly. They hadn't eaten in quite a while. I'm a Northern, not going to apologize for winning. Yes. So anyway, I guess that's going to do it. For myself and for General Ezekiel Wilhelm Gulley of the 20th Indiana Volunteer Regiment of the Iron Brigade. I'm looking at that old clock on the wall. Oh, yeah, I've got my American Freedom t-shirt on, too, by the way, because, obviously. And that old clock on the wall says, like the Reverend Al Green, it's time for me to get up on out of here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And with all that being said, after getting 0 super chats or memberships, God, the only thing left to say is, till next time. We'll see you next time.
We're talking about spiders, and we're talking about pervitin, and we're talking about Bigfoot. I'm here to tell you where he's been. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. They call me Mr. Gulley. I'm here to save the day. They call me Mr. Gulley, and I'm gonna lead the way. Here we go now. I'm talking about Mr. Gulley, and you don't know where he's been. Oh no, he's been right in your alley. Well, I'm Mr. Gulley, yes I am. So what we're talking about?